Yeah, I mean, this has been in the last 6 weeks or so, so in the well after our last lunch, but I've been eating much. And
Well, no, I'm not a fan, really.
okay.
I'm not a fan. No. I mean, I would say I'm actually probably not a fan of Nietzsche. But I'm intrigued by him because of certain things I've been thinking about lately and trying to understand what his core message is, which I think I still don't fully understand.
Yeah, nor do I. I'm again glad that you corrected me. You're interested in Nietzsche.
That's better. Yeah.
And I I spoke to a professor who studies Nietzsche, a philosopher, obviously, and what I mentioned that I was thinking about being vegan, and he sort of just went like this and was very disappointed and he said a couple of things. One thing he said was that I should relish in the fact that we're superior dominant animals and can subjugate the animals we eat, and I should relish in their suffering for my benefit.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, I thought that was a very interesting thing to say, and I've been thinking.
Is he a Nietzschean? Because that sort of
Yes.
sounds Nietzschean. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been thinking a lot about that since, and in the context of this conversation that I knew we were going to have, I was wondering if you could consider a patient to be healed if every time they're eating meat, they're thinking, I'm so glad that this pig was stuffed in a crate and suffered, and I'm enjoying this more because of the suffering of the animal.
I would think that would be the opposite of what I would be trying to promote in my therapeutic practice. That's exactly the opposite.
Right, and I think that that's very interesting because I'm a moral anti-realist, which you know, so I don't think that there are these moral facts. And this gets back to where I was starting from when I said that you're being presumptuous. I don't mean that in an offensive way, but a presumptuous in the sense that you have this insight into moral facts about what is right and wrong. For me, the idea of relishing in the suffering of the pig that you're eating is odious only because it's contrary to my values. My values being, well, it makes me feel bad when animals are suffering. But I don't think that there's a moral fact of the matter.
Yeah, and I'm very disinclined to engage with you like in a debate on this because you will win. Because I don't spend my time sort of thinking about these things in terms of like philosophical categories or analytical, logical. That's not how my mind works. But I'm going to just say to you that I think the fact that you would feel uncomfortable eating meat and then getting pleasure from the animal's suffering, to me, the fact that that would bother you is, again, tied to what I would say is universal moral truths having to do with compassion and empathy and recognition of our interconnectedness. I think those are enduring true things, and the fact that it creates discomfort in you, is number one, a good thing, and number two, a universal truth. So that's what I would say.
Right. My simple knee-jerk response to that is we can make a much simpler or we can give a much simpler and more scientific explanation without having to posit sort of what I would call spooky moral facts by just appealing to my neurology and psychology. Because you have cases, just think of the shooter at UT Austin, I don't know when it was, 20, 30 years ago, where he had a tumor in his brain that resulted in this immense disregard for the lives of other people. And in fact, the polar opposite, where he just had to go out and kill them, and I think he killed his wife and his mother-in-law and his dog. And as opposed to positing some sixth sense where we can attune ourselves to these non-causal moral facts, though some people might think that they are, causal. We can just say, okay, we're, for whatever reason, appealing to evolutionary biology or just culture, we feel this way about other animals naturally.
Yeah, I mean, just because, we can have a neurobiological explanation for how we are and what we do, that doesn't preclude the possibility of there being these kind of universal moral truths, right? Because we have the machinery to enact them doesn't mean that they don't separately exist as some kind of reality.
Certainly.
Okay, and then also, again, I would just say that it's not necessarily appealing to some sort of spooky sixth sense. I mean, the fact that we can all agree that that shooter was doing something morally reprehensible, in that given context. I mean, again, I don't. We're not like reinventing the wheel there. That's sort of, those notions have been around for a long time. And yes, you can use evolutionary biology. Well, it makes sense. We don't want to kill each other off. Then that would end the species. Sure. I mean, you can use some purely materialistic, naturalistic explanation for all of those things. And that doesn't necessarily, again, also preclude the possibility of there being these sort of, I don't know really what you call them, spooky sixth sense, whatever it is. I don't think those things, maybe they're the same thing, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you entirely that none of what I've said precludes the possibility of these moral facts. But if the materialist, naturalist can account for our moral behavior without having to posit these moral facts, then the onus is on the moral realist who believes in these moral facts to give us a very convincing account of what they are and how we are attuned to them. But
yeah. I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
And I'm not trying to press you into
a
debate.
No, it's all good. I mean, I think this gets into sort of the sort of hyper-rationalism that we've come to, in this day and age. We so value these sort of logical, rational, categorizations and analyses. But I think we need to leave room for just like intuition, emotion, gut sense. And I'm not sure we really need to go down that road where, okay, you have to give me a defense of these moral facts, blah, 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 the frame, blah, what about, 1,000 years ago they were killing babies and it was fine. Again, it's always going to be contextual, and maybe there will be variations in what's morally right and wrong over time, given the historical context, sure. But, in that context, I just feel like there are still these universal truths about, how people need and want to treat each other.